Welcome to Reconcile Africa, where we have discussions that awaken us to the consciousness of the reality that we are one, while enlivening that spirit of solidarity that results in loving, caring acts which uplift global Africa. Today we're talking about Reconcile Africa, and we're talking global Africa. And I have with me in the studio someone who has not only accomplished a lot within the spiritual realm, but has also been able to translate that into tangible realities to benefit people within the area of economic empowerment and community development. He's in the person of Bishop Clyde Alexander, and we're going to journey together on vision conception through now. Bishop Alexander, welcome.
Thank you.
To Reconcile Africa.
Yes, sir.
Now, I usually start with this question. Who are you? And why the heck will you say you're on earth?
Wow. I am the son of, the biological son of Claude Alexander Sr. and Autrey Hickerson Alexander. Mm-hmm. I'm also the son of Dr. Robert Smith, who married my mom after my father and mother divorced when I was 2. Okay. I am the husband of Kimberly. Mm-hmm. I am the father of Cameron, age 18, and Carson, age 19, 2 beautiful young women. I am the pastor of the Park Church, been here for 28 years. I'm a servant of the Lord, created and gifted by Him to represent Him in a full and holistic way. I am one who is continuing to be challenged and called into areas of service, both inside of Charlotte and outside, and indeed the world.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. So, reading a little bit about your history,
yes,
it's obvious that you had responsibility, great responsibility thrust upon you at a very young age, 26 years,
yes,
it sounds.
Yes.
So the story goes that the church was looking for a 35-year-old, married,
yes,
and you appeared a 26-year-old. At the end of the day, they broke all their own rules.
Broke their rules.
To enlist you.
Right.
And you've gone from about, was it 600 to 9,000?
Well,
thereabout,
like
around a 26-year-old. I want to go a little bit into what is under your hood, really.
Okay.
You know, let's lift the bonnet. Let's look at the engine, right?
Right.
So, what's the secret? What is the secret?
Well, I've been blessed by a combination of investments that God has made. First, by way of my family, my dad, who raised me, was heavily involved in the civil rights movement.
Oh, I see.
As a physician.
Okay.
He was one who would be assigned to Dr. King whenever the marches would be in Mississippi.
I see.
He was a part of the medical group that would assign physicians for all of the marches wherever they were.
I see.
He was involved in the desegregation of the American Medical Association. And so my mom, a psychiatrist, heavily involved in community health.
Okay.
And both were strong believers. And so there was no division between spiritual commitment and community involvement. They were one and the same. And so I learned from them this notion of, and they would not call it, but what I come to understand is incarnational, the enfleshment of the work of God being translated in tangible ways. In their instance, it was through medicine and healthcare. For me, it would become through community development. economic development, community service, those types of things. That was then watered by my time at Morehouse College, which is the bastion for African American male leadership in whatever form. We were taught that it would be our mission to make a contribution to the world in whatever field we found ourselves.
You had a great legacy in the person of Dr. King.
Oh, many individuals in that light. And then having had the opportunity to be educated in Pittsburgh during a time of economic decline, when the mills left. And, you know, it's one thing to get theological education, but how does that impact the reality in which you find yourself? And dealing with a small congregation right outside of Pittsburgh, with people who were impacted by that dramatic shift in economic reality, put me in touch with their pain, with their needs, and then being called to Charlotte, to a church that had suffered trauma by way of split, but was willing to throw out everything that they said that they wanted and take a chance on a 26-year-old. It's been a journey, to say the least. But those formative things, by way of home, by way of education, by way of life experiences, it fit me for a reality of people who would be flexible enough to take a chance and would then be willing to walk out this call that God was making upon us in ways that we did not see in 1990, but are continuing to be made manifest even in 2018.
Wow. Well, Reconcile Africa,
Global
Africa, is my mission. It's the vision of African Diaspora Nation. And it is an honor to be in the presence of someone who has been able to reconcile what was torn when you got here, to rebuild. And if I was looking at the qualifications of one who could take on this, self-transcendent quest for reconciling global Africa, it seems like you've done it on the U.S. level. You've had forays into Africa. And it is an honor to be engaging you and actually talking about a global vision of reconciling global Africa. Amazing. So, you have been very close. You have, I could say, been in a position where you felt the pulse of the African American heart, the soul of the African American community. What would you say is the current status quo in the global African Union? How does the community of people of African descent perceive Africa? What is the status quo that we're working from? How would you describe that?
Unfortunately, for many people, it is still the stereotypical understanding of underdevelopment, poverty, corruption, and backwards mentality. Unfortunately, for those who have been privileged to actually travel to the continent and meet the people, they understand that that stereotype is simply a stereotype. They come to know that 6 of the fastest growing economies in the world are located right on the continent. they discover the immense level of intelligence that people have, the sophistication of thought, the urbanization that is there, and the great degree of wealth, both of human capital as well as resources, rich.
Yeah.
And therefore, the need to reconnect.
Yeah.
Those who travel come to understand that we both have been victims of misinformation.
Yes.
But when we're able to connect the dots, we're able to see the great possibility. Not just the great possibility, but the moral imperative.
That's right.
There is a moral imperative that we have to reconnect, reconcile, reclaim, and rebuild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very well put. I mean, I couldn't say it any better way. So, what is that vision, that desired state that you envisage in a reconciled Africa? You know, how do we articulate that in a way which becomes easily relatable to, you know, the streets in Black? What can you help paint that picture? You know, what do you see in that reconciled global African community, which could actually be a prerequisite for a truly reconciled human family?
Yes.
What do you envisage, you know, that intermediary stage?
Yes. So if we were to talk about it in terms of lanes that run parallel, okay. So the first lane would be spiritual, psychological, okay, and in that lane that we see ourselves as similar to the family of Jacob.
Wow.
Okay, and especially during a time when there's famine in Canaan, there is tremendous blessing and bounty in Egypt, and the person who happens to have access to those resources is Joseph, their brother from whom they've been disconnected.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And how through the power of God, certainly, they are reconciled, and the whole family is blessed.
Wow.
Okay. I think there needs to be a move where we see ourselves as one family. Currently, we call ourselves Africans and African diasporans.
Yes.
Right? And for those who were born in America, African American. All right. But how do we come to see ourselves as one family? And how do we come to accept and affirm the gifts that each has, okay, and that we need each other to bring those gifts for the benefit of the whole?
That's right.
Okay. That is a spiritual and mental thing.
That's right.
Okay. And that's probably the most difficult, right?
Yeah.
Right, to achieve. Okay. The easier things are the commerce but those things don't work well. Right?
Without spiritual and psychological.
Right. And so that at the heart of whatever we do, that has to happen. Okay. And so when you talk about Reconcile Africa, that's front and center.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Now, how does that happen? Well, that happens through exposure. It happens through the development of relationships.
Yeah.
It happens through, and you're beginning to start this, this happens through young people going there and seeing. And when they go there and they see, something happens.
Yeah.
Something happens to their understanding of themselves. Something also happens in terms of what they view as possibility. The wonderful thing about a Jewish child who was born in the U.S., but because of the connection to Israel, that Jewish child does not have dislocation, but that child has location.
Yeah.
And with expanded location comes a sense of expanded opportunity.
Yeah.
That child understands that what is possible to him or her is not limited to what happens here in America.
That's right.
Okay. That is what has to happen to the African American who goes to the continent and begins to see that I need not be limited by what is here, but there is a possibility where I'm from.
Yeah.
Likewise, for the African who comes here,
Oh, yes.
right, who sees here and says, I'm not limited to the continent of Africa, or I'm not limited to Europe, right, but there's a possibility for me to have a footprint here, right? So expanded understanding of what is possible, that through exposure, through travel, all right? The building of relationships is essential to anything, okay? And so what happens when you get some key entrepreneurs from both sides who are able to say, okay, let's dream. What would it look like? Now that Africa is establishing a unified trade zone, right? What happens when either a region of Africa develops its own currency and ties it to its own minerals, right? Or the continent as a whole develops its own currency, like Europe did. And rather than tying it to what Europe ties it to, you tie it to your own resources, right? What happens when? All right. How do we then look at this notion, because we will be coming up on this 400th anniversary of the first Africans being brought to the United States. How do we look at that epic moment in time and see it as an opportunity for reclaiming what we've lost, understanding what we've lost first of all, and then being able to reclaim it, to reconcile, okay, and then look at what's possible to rebuild. This God has given the continent unique resources, human and natural. He has blessed some of the sons and daughters to be in the United States for a period of time, to gain experience and exposure and access. But that was never for them to be isolated. It's for them to be connected for the benefit, yes, of themselves, but for the service of the world.
Wow.
And if we get that, a global revolution
Yeah.
is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That is breathtaking. I need to catch my breath. I've been on a flight in the visionary realm.
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. And I like the fact that you also touched on the how.
Yes.
The how, travel, exchange, entrepreneurial partnerships,
Yes.
envisioning together. A self-transcendent paradigm.
Yeah.
But we are blessed, aren't we? If we consider the resources available 100 years ago to people who tried to do this. Let's talk about people who in their own imperfect ways have tried to undertake initiatives like this in an era of snail mail and ship travel.
Right.
Marcus Garvey being able to mobilize about 1 million people in the United Negro Improvement Association. Now, and look at us today. We can sit here and broadcast to the whole world.
Yes. Exactly.
We can get products to different places within a matter of days. What seems to be missing is that leader who is able to forcefully articulate this vision. You have done excellently. And the groundswell of a response from the people who already have this truth embedded within them. It's a matter of resonance, re-echoing what they already know in their innermost hearts, but don't know in their consciousness.
Yes.
So, from today,
Yeah.
what do you think are the next steps which should happen over, say, the next year to start manifesting this dream you have so lovely painted?
Well, I think it's leveraging the relationships that we have. Okay, there are relationships that we have of like-minded individuals who now are in positions of influence in institutions that can help make a difference.
Yeah.
So, Ambassador Michael Battle, he is the one who connected us.
And I'm thankful.
Right. Oh, yes. Yeah. And so it's, and recognizing that there is something in the air. There's something in the air that, to which people are becoming more sensitive.
Yes.
And recognizing that their place in the world, the leverage that they have, the access that they have, is not just for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And so it's being able to bring those individuals into conversations like this and larger conversations to say, okay, this is the opportunity.
Wow. Super.
These are roles that you can play, and giving them the space to utilize their own creativity to flesh it out. So what would it look like to get the head of UNCF to convene those college presidents?
Okay.
Right. What would it look like to get the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce?
Wow.
What does it look like to get them to agree? Okay, we're going to do peer learning. So we're going to identify 25 of you, and then to ask the counterpart in, let's say, Ghana, to identify 25. And for the next 3 years, you're going to be a peer learning community. Because there have been mistakes
Yeah.
that both of us have made, right? That if we're able to learn from each other,
Yeah.
we won't make those again.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? And we then have developed the trust necessary to assume risk.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay? People aren't going to assume risk if there's mistrust.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we are able to develop trust, then they'll be willing to assume risk.
Yes.
And another word for risk is faith.
Yeah.
Faith is risky,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. But it's our trust in God that causes us to take the risk.
Yes.
And likewise, it's our trust in each other that empowers us to take certain risks.
Yes.
So yeah.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So we're in such a space.
Yes. Yeah,
right now.
Right.
We are in the Park Expo and Convention Center
Yeah.
in Charlotte.
Yes.
Enormous space.
Yes.
More than 500 and something thousand square foot altogether.
Yes.
So it reminds me of the question which someone asked, you know, when Moses was getting his assignment and he was hesitant, you know, he was asked, what do you already have in your hands?
Right. Yeah. Right.
So within this network, there seems to be physical space, intellectual capital, access to the educational stakeholders, the government stakeholders. It just seems that it's just integration and synthesis and a program of action.
Yeah.
And I'd like to honor what has already been accomplished here. And I look forward to this journey,
Yeah.
to manifest this vision, which has been so nicely laid out in a very detailed way. So before we go, you know, what would you like to say to, you know, those who may be hesitant, you know, who may be double-minded about the opportunities that await? You know, do you have a message for such to help them come to that place of internal convergence and resolution to journey with us along this path?
Wow. Well, double-mindedness, while challenging, has a silver lining therein, because within double-mindedness, there is a God thought. There is the sense of a God purpose. There is something that is ringing true to you that is compelling. The challenge is that it is often met by a fear. Okay, it can be a fear of failure, a fear of not having enough time, fear of lack of resources, whatever. Okay, and what has been important for me is to recognize what that fear is. Okay, to understand it for what it is, but I also realize that what the depth of that fear is usually tied to the extent of the opportunity.
Okay.
Okay, all right. And if I ever lock in on the extent of the opportunity, okay, then that gives me power.
I see.
That gives me power. It also causes me to know that there are certain questions that I will not have answered until I take a certain step. That there are certain realizations about myself that I will not come to know until I step in to that. One of the biggest fears that I had in my life was the fear of being a father. Big fear. But I came to understand that God gave me exactly what I needed to be a father when I became one. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing for that individual. For you to, where there is this sense of promise and potential and call, certain questions will only be answered when you say yes to that call. Certain things will only be realized and understood when you step into that space, because it is only when you step into that space that the need is there for God to fulfill it. Wow. As long as I'm sitting in the boat, there's no need for God to give me the capacity to walk on water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's only when I step out and start walking that the need arises for God.
Wow.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bishop Alexander, for this opportunity. It has been a huge blessing, and we look forward to carrying on many more conversations and actually appraising the progress made along this journey.
Yes.
Well, listeners, you have been watching another edition of Reconcile Africa, where we have discussions that awaken us to the consciousness of our oneness while enlivening us to the reality that we are one, enlivening us to acts of solidarity which uplift global Africa. I've been your host, Kwabena Boateng. Thanks for watching.